protection of generational wealth. If we bankrupt a business or choke in a crisis, we don't get a second, third, or fourth chance. If things don't go our way, we don't have the luxury of whining or cheating others to get further ahead. No. We don't get to change the rules so we always win. If we see a mountain in front of us, we don't expect there to be an escalator waiting to take us to the top. It's up to us to remember what Kamala's mother told her. Don't just sit around and complain. Do something. So if they lie about her, and they will, we've got to do something. If we see a bad poll, and we will, we got to put down that phone and do something. If we start feeling tired, if we start feeling that dread creeping back in, we got to pick ourselves up, throw water on our face, and what?
It is one of the oldest tricks in politics. From a guy whose act has, let's face it, gotten pretty stale. We do not need 4 more years of bluster and bumbling and chaos. We have seen that movie before, and we all know that the sequel is usually worse. Our fellow citizens deserve the same grace we hope they'll extend to us. That's how we can build a true Democratic majority, one that can get things done. And by the way, that does not just matter to the people in this country. The rest of the world is watching to see if we can actually pull this off. I believe that's what we yearn for. A return to an America where we work together and look out for each other. A restoration of what Lincoln called, on the eve of Civil War, our bonds of affection. An America that taps what he called the better angels of our nature. That is what this election is about.
2 speeches that will be talked about for as long as there are political conventions in the United States is where we start today with a full set of guests in Chicago. Pennsylvania State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta is here. He spoke last night at the convention. Plus, former Capitol Police officer, author of Standing My Ground, a Capitol Police officer's fight for accountability and good trouble. After January 6th, our dear friend Harry Dunn's here and back with us for day 3 of DNC coverage. Former U.S. Senator, co-host of MSNBC's How to Win 2024 podcast, Claire McCaskill is here. Claire, let's start with Michelle's moment. This speech was not a political speech. This was sort of an American moment. You sort of stopped and said, is she going to go there? And then she went there. And then you said, oh, my God, and she's going back. And she's going back. She tapped into her own grief. She started by saying, I wasn't sure if I was steady enough after losing my mom to be here with you all. But it was too important. And she, I think, spoke to the sort of grief and despair of watching our democracy ransacked by Donald Trump. And whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you have a right to that grief. She also spoke to the fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. Shame on me-ness of predicting what Trump's going to do to Kamala Harris as a woman and a black woman. And she just nailed it. What was it like in the room?
I got to tell you, she did frankly, the speech should be studied. And there are times I just bemoan the fact that Michelle Obama really doesn't like the political back and forth and is not interested in ever running, because really she is one of the very best at communicating in a way that everyone feels better when she's done, feels like a better person. And I think what drove that speech last night, Nicolle, was her mother's values that were instilled in her, and how much she misses her mother, and how much she wanted to channel her mother's values. But the masterful part, the part that made me smile, is how she took down Donald Trump without ever saying his name. The affirmative action of generational wealth. The escalator taking you to the top of the mountain. The imagery all screamed Donald Trump, but she never had to say his name. That is tough stuff to do, and she did it so well. I cried, beginning at Dougie Imhoff, all the way through Barack Obama.
And we should nod to what's happening behind you. The great Stevie Wonder is doing a rehearsal.
Yes.
Let's listen for a second, Claire.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to make you talk over that. Some of what's to come tonight.
I just was taken for a moment. You know how badly I want to turn around and look? You know, he's got dancers, and it's, they teased me the other day with James Taylor, and then they had to cut him. So I think they learned their lesson, and we're going to get to see both John Legend and Stevie Wonder tonight.
It's amazing.
Rock stars in our political party.
It's amazing. Representative Kenyatta, your thoughts about the twin speeches from Michelle and President Obama last night?
You know, it was so special because piece by piece, they dismantled Donald Trump's entire thesis and theory of the political case. From the day he came down that escalator, his entire message has been that America is a bad place. And it is bad in part because our neighbors are bad. There's something about the little old lady who shows up twice a year at the polling location to play her part in the American experience, that all these people are somehow not truly American. I have never seen a person who has benefited so much from the American promise be so ungrateful. You know, I grew up in a working poor family in North Philly. Both of my parents died by the time I was 27. And this whole week is so special. My mom would have been 65 on Monday, as I said to Joy. She couldn't have imagined that we would be doing this week what we are doing. And what I always believe, and what you've heard throughout this convention, is that our neighbors aren't our enemies. Our neighbors actually are the solution to America's biggest problems and challenges. We do it together. And this ungrateful, despicable man was taken apart piece by piece like a Lego set by the president and the first lady yesterday.
I love that, a Lego set. As a Lego mom, I feel that. Harry Dunn, let me show you some of what folks are talking about, these almost surgical attacks on Donald Trump.
Now, unfortunately, we know what comes next. We know folks are going to do everything they can to distort her truth. My husband and I sadly know a little something about this. For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hardworking, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. Who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
One thing is for certain, Donald Trump is not losing sleep over that question. Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances that's actually been getting worse now that he's afraid of losing to Kamala. There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on and on.
I think we need a new term for mic drops because they dropped them over and over again. Harry Dunn, your thoughts?
It was so good. It was so refreshing. The energy in the room was just palpable. You could just feel it. But I'll tell you one thing. I wasn't surprised. Anybody who knows Michelle Obama, anybody who's listened to Barack Obama knows that when they speak, they're going to come with it. They've been doing it their whole lives. And on the edge of my seat is an understatement. But I tell you one thing, I was happy, I was proud, and I was thankful for these last 3+ years since January 6th. It's kind of been soft jabs at him, like, hey, guys, the country's at stake. And I was just so proud that people were coming out with haymakers directly going after Donald Trump. It's what we need. We are at our last straw right now. The institutions of the Senate, they failed us to hold Donald Trump accountable. The institution of the Supreme Court, they failed us to hold Donald Trump accountable. This is our last chance to hold Donald Trump accountable, November 5th at the ballot box. And people need to understand the gravity of what is at stake right now. There is no more time for the light-hearted jabs or anything like that. We're at the verge of losing our democracy, of losing our country. And we'll only have ourselves to blame when it comes back on November 5th if we do not elect Kamala Harris. That's why I have been so adamant going across the country, just pounding the pavement to do whatever I can do to help get her elected. Like I said, on January 6th, we did our job as police officers. But on January 7th, all the way up until right now, today, tomorrow, the day after, I do because I love this country. I love what makes us special in America. And I'm just so thankful that they are coming out, gloves off, saying, hey, it's time to go.
I love that analysis, Harry Dunn. Let me show you something else they said. And I actually immediately thought of you. I sent a note. I said, we need to talk to Harry Dunn about this because you've been doing some of this work by yourself, talking about the mental health damage we've all suffered in a moment, but not to associate ourselves with what the police officers went through on January 6th, but just watching the unanswered attack and the failures of our institutions to hold Donald Trump accountable for his conduct on January 6th. Let me show you what the president and first lady had to say on those issues.
To be honest, I am realizing that until recently, I have mourned the dimming of that hope. And maybe you've experienced the same feelings. Is that deep pit in my stomach, a palpable sense of dread about the future?
We live in a time of such confusion and rancor, with a culture that puts a premium on things that don't last. Money, fame, status, likes. We chase the approval of strangers on our phones. We build all manner of walls and fences around ourselves, and then we wonder why we feel so alone.